Welcome to Học Tiếng Anh với Joseph, where we build vocabulary and practice pronunciation through reading. Continuing with The Cat in the Box, a history of science in 100 experiments. Today's story concerns death to bacteria, and we will encounter a very familiar face of Louis Pasteur. Proof that diseases are caused by germs invading the body from outside, and refutation of the idea that complex life could arise by spontaneous generation from non-living things came from the work of Louis Pasteur in France in the second half of the 19th century. In 1854, he became professor of chemistry at the University of Lille, where his studies included advising local industries on overcoming practical problems. The work for which he became famous stemmed from his work with the brewing industry, finding ways to prevent products from going sour. Pasteur studied sour beer under the microscope and found that it was filled with a large number of tiny organisms. It had previously been thought that such contamination was produced by the beer going sour, but Pasteur was convinced that they were the cause of the beer going sour. He showed that fermentation is produced by naturally occurring yeasts, and that grape juice drawn by a hypodermic needle from inside a fruit would never ferment in a sterilized container, because the yeast was present only on the skin of the fruit. The sourness in wine and beer that had gone off was being caused by contamination from outside, which triggered the production of lactic acid in the brew. The same problem occurred with milk. Pasteur found that heating milk to a temperature between 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius and 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, and then cooling it, killed the offending organisms, bacteria, preventing it going sour. The process, tested in 1862, became known as pasteurization. But this was just a beginning. Although Pasteur was not the first person to come up with the germ theory of the disease, it was a minority view in the 1850s, vociferously opposed by the medical establishment. Pasteur promoted the idea and proposed that disease could be prevented by stopping microorganisms from entering the body. This encouraged others to develop the use of antiseptics and promote cleanliness in surgery, leading to a dramatic decline in hospital death rates. In another series of experiments, Pasteur boiled broths in glass flasks to pasteurize them, then left them connected to the air through narrow tubes with filters to prevent any contamination from getting in. Nothing grew in the broths. He wrote, "Never will the doctrine of spontaneous generation recover from mortal blow from this simple experiment. There is no known circumstance in which it can be confirmed that microscopic beings came into the world without germs, without parents similar to themselves." Pasteur went on to work with diseases and discovered the technique of preparing a weakened form of a disease-causing agent to act as a vaccine. This was different from Edward Jenner's pioneering work, which had used a natural but weaker disease, cowpox, to provide immunity against a deadly disease, smallpox. In 1879, Pasteur discovered that after chickens were injected with a culture of chicken cholera that had accidentally been left to one side for a month, they became unwell but recovered. His assistant was going to throw away the faulty culture, but Pasteur stopped him. He realized that the chickens might now be immune to the disease, and that proved to be the case. Pasteur went on to develop vaccines for anthrax and rabies in a similar fashion, weakening or killing the bacteria in various ways, and was responsible for suggesting that Jenner's term vaccine should be applied to all such artificially weakened disease organisms. The work on rabies led Pasteur to a professional indiscretion that could have serious consequences. The vaccine was developed by a medical doctor, Émile Roux, who was a colleague of Pasteur. It had been tested successfully on 50 dogs when, on July 6, 1885, a 9-year-old boy, Joseph Meister, was bitten by a rabid dog and brought to Pasteur. After discussing the situation with his team and with time of the essence, Pasteur personally administered the vaccine to the boy. The death of this child appearing to be inevitable, I decided, not without lively and sore anxiety, as may well be believed, to try upon Joseph Meister the method which I had found constantly successful with dogs. Consequently, 60 hours after the bites, and in the presence of Doctors Vupien and Granchet, young Meister was inoculated under a fold of skin with half a syringe full of spinal cord of a rabbit which had died of rabies. It had been preserved for 15 days in a flask of dry air. In the following days, fresh inoculations were made. I thus made 13 inoculations. On the last days, I inoculated Joseph Meister with the most virulent virus of rabies. Pasteur was not a qualified medical doctor and would have been in serious trouble if things had gone wrong. Fortunately, however, the boy recovered, and the positive publicity helped to ensure the widespread acceptance of vaccination. Moving on to the vocabulary section, we have a lot today. Diseases actually are caused by germs. Diseases are caused by germs. Refutation. It's not reputation. Reputation is different. Going sour. Going sour. Tiny organisms. Organisms. Fermentation. 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 Yeasts. 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 Hypodermic needle. Hypodermic needle. Hypodermic needle. Lactic acid. Lactic acid. Lactic acid. Pasteurization. Pasteurized. Pasteurization. Vociferous. Vociferously. Vociferous. Vociferously. Or vociferously, maybe. Have to check. Microorganisms, microorganisms, microorganisms. Antiseptic, antiseptic, antiseptic. Dramatic decline, dramatic decline. Drama, drama, dramatic decline. Doctrine of spontaneous generation, doctrine of spontaneous generation. Anthrax and rabies, anthrax, anthrax and rabies. Indiscretion, indiscretion, indiscretion. Serious consequences, serious consequences, serious consequences. Widespread acceptance, widespread acceptance, widespread acceptance. There are a lot to take in with this story, so keep on practicing. Thank you for your time, and as usual, I will see you in the next story. Bye for now.